I'm very, very happy to welcome all of you to our actually second LinkedIn Live by Cleanup. Today it's all about conscious cosmetic brands, challenges and changes for a holistic approach. And yeah, we have a really nice lineup of speakers today. We will discuss a lot about packaging, about holistic approaches, challenges in the system, and how to move forward, basically. And let's start with a quick round of introductions. Claire, do you want to start introducing yourself?
Yeah, I can start. So I'm Claire. I'm the brand director at KMI Brands. We have a portfolio of brands within the business, Naughty, which is a 97% natural brand, being ours. I'm responsible for all the brand development, really customer-led insight and all marketing and communication. So for the last 13 years, that's been my core role, and then a media background in an agency prior to that.
Okay, brilliant. Alex, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a global sustainability manager at No7 Beauty Company. For those of you who might not be familiar, No7 Beauty Company is part of the WBA, World Green Boots Alliance. And it is effectively a house of brands for the standalone brands that you might be familiar with, such as No7, Lizel, Soap and Glory, Botanics, Your Good Skin, and Sleek. I have been part of WBA for 2 years, but before that, I worked for Marks & Spencer as a sustainability manager, part of their Plan A team. And before that, my background is in change management and project management. But also, while I was in M&S and also here, I have a deep passion for circularity, and quite interested also in the sort of end of life side of things, so recycling and all of that. So really excited to be talking about this kind of topics today.
Perfect, thank you very much. And then Robert.
Yeah, and thanks to Cleanup for having us and for making these events. I appreciate that. I'm Robert Schmidt. I've been working with the green transition for the last 25 years in various businesses, as primarily as a consultant. But the last 4 years, I've been full-time in cosmetics, and now I am head of sustainability in a company called House of Cosmetics, but it's actually a divided role because I'm in a House of Cosmetics, which is a private labeling producer, but I'm spending like 95% of my time working with our biggest brand, eCooking, where we have an ambitious plan to be the biggest Danish cosmetic brand abroad. And we are focusing a lot on packaging, but also, of course, ingredients and governance. So it's like the entire ESG package. But I've been, as I said, especially involved in developing alternative packagings the last few years. Alternatives to, I usually call it death plastics, but fossil plastic. Trying to find new materials, a new way of packaging our cosmetic products.
Very, very interesting, and I think that already gives a good overview of how much we can cover today. And we already heard the term sustainability in the intros quite a bit, and it's become such a almost mainstream term nowadays. Every company has a department that is taking care of sustainability, and to some degree, personally, I very much appreciate that, because it also means that the conversations are shifting in the right direction. At the same time, there's also the danger of it becoming a buzzword, right, where brands can hide themselves behind. And the more we're moving forward, the more critical this term itself is seen by different brands. And Robert, I remember us having a good conversation on that already in the past. Yeah. Maybe you can give us your opinion on the term sustainability itself.
Yeah. In general, I really like the word sustainability, and I'm old enough to remember the 80s and the report from Gro Harlem Brundtland in was it 85, where the term sustainability was like presented more or less for the first time, speaking in the business development. And I really like the definition where you're talking about not jeopardizing the future generations' possibility for using resources. When it comes to cosmetics, I think it's a problem for us to use the word sustainability because the way we're doing things today, especially because most of us are using fossil plastic packagings still, which is not a renewable resource. So in that sense, we will be jeopardizing the future generation in exploring their utilities of resources. So I think we should use other terms until we have 100% circular systems and circular materials. Could be, bio-based materials or some materials that are easier to recycle, like glass, could be metals and stuff like this. So in general, I think we should be careful not using the word sustainability where we, actually are not sustainable.
Yeah,
that's the short version.
Yeah, I personally agree to that, and somewhere someone kind of turned the word around and said it's about the ability to sustain, right? This is what the word in the end means, and I think that puts a nice spin on it. And it's not just done with plugging a trust mark on it and says like this is now a green product, right? There's a lot of work that needs to go on in the background, and this is why we also called this entire session here a holistic approach. And Alex, maybe you can shine a bit of light on how you approach the challenges that are there today. Is there a certain framework of how you look at things? What are the points where we need to work on, and what are the most important ones?
So I think, I really like what Robert was saying before around sustainability. And I think from my perspective, it's really important that there is authenticity around everything that we are looking to do. And you're actually considering all the aspects of what would mean sustainability, because you have to look not just as resources, but also like the impact on the people side of things, and what are you as a brand affecting in the world around you. So I think the holistic approach is really important, and not just looking at one aspect like such as environmental sustainability, but actually thinking about what are the other levers that you can have in the world. And obviously it's not easy, and I don't think anybody's pretending that it is, but I think I'm sure this term has been used a lot before, progress, not perfection. And it's really important for, that we work with people to celebrate the journey and the effort, so long as it's authentic, so long as it's, it's coming from a good place, and not just expect perfection. And I think this is exactly the kind of the attitude that we're seeing from, some younger companies, some smaller companies, where they are sort of celebrating this. I guess the sort of like making sure that it's all authentic and done with the right intention is the really important thing.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. And it's also nice to see how much change can be driven by a demanding consumer, basically. And Claire, I mean, obviously we work together with you, so we know quite a bit about what your approaches are. And can you tell us also how you look at this broader spectrum of a holistic approach at KMI, and what initiatives you've started over the years?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you say, we were delighted to start working with Clean Hub, because it was something when we were asking our customers what are they interested in, and actually we asked them what sustainability means to them, because as I think we've all said, there is no one clean definition of that. And by us doing this, it's acknowledging that it's a step to us making a change. It's not perfect. Alex, I totally agree. The progress, not perfection is definitely used, and it was our nod to that. The other area from a KMI business perspective, as well as for Naughty, again, as Alex said, is the social impact. So from a business, we look at the UN Sustainability Development Goals, and really we've identified 5 that as a team we feel particularly passionate about, and life below water is one of those. So again, everything that we do through all of our sourcing, we control all of our sourcing in our supply chain. So at every point we are thinking about the decisions we make and the impact that will have. My starting point will be the customer, as part of my role is, and why I say that I tend to default to them, to ask them how they're feeling about it as well, so that we can respond in a way that they will understand, but also be quite open. They've reacted so brilliantly to Clean Hub. I have to say it's been wonderful to see that, and I think it's helping them to understand the role of what you guys do, and kind of capturing some of that waste before it even goes into the ocean, which I think we're going to come on to talk about later, so I won't go too much into that. But yeah, so really important, absolutely holistic approach for us.
Yeah, thanks for shining light on that. And exactly, we are moving into packaging specifically, and as you said, right, it's about looking at this entire picture. It's not just doing one thing and then expect that this is the solution. And I think this is where there's a lot of opportunity also from a brand's perspective to speak about, is this progress? We will never reach the top probably, and can say that we are absolutely perfect, but taking everyone on that journey of how we want to become better is very, very powerful. And if we speak about packaging in particular, the consumer often gets the packaging and probably also makes a lot of the buying decision based on how it's designed, etc. At the same time, there's this general aversion against plastic. At the same time, the packaging is there to protect the very product that the consumer is buying, right? And one of the first decisions is obviously what kind of packaging material will be used. And it would be very interesting to get your perspectives on it, what you see in trends. Are there new materials coming up? How do you make decisions when it comes to choosing the material? And maybe we start again with Robert and take this around the circle.
Yeah, I really like to follow the new small brands, upcoming brands, to see what choices they make. And I see more and more small, especially Northern Europe, brands using the old-fashioned materials like aluminium and glass. And one of the main reasons is that a lot of these brands are looking into refill systems and take-back systems. And as we also experienced in our company, it's not possible with ordinary plastic packagings to clean them properly, because it will take a lot of harsh chemicals to clean it, especially if it's like conditioners or shampoos or very oily products. And also you will need a very high temperature of water, and that doesn't not go along with a PET bottle, for example. So, but using glass, you can boil a glass, you can clean it 100%, and it will not be damaged by the high temperatures. The same with aluminium, and aluminium is a nice material in many ways. First of all, it's one of the most abundant materials on Earth. I think it's like the third most common atom on the planet Earth. It's aluminium. So we will never run out of aluminium. So, but of course, the recycle level today is around 75%. We need to get that up higher in order for us to say this is actually a responsible way of using a resource. But it's very easy to clean it. It's very easy to remelt it and make a new product out of it. And it's a light material, because that's the backside of using glass. It's very heavy. It's breakable. So we will we will see other problematics in those materials. But when you're looking at the new brands coming up, they are trying as much as possible to avoid fossil plast. So they are looking into aluminiums, they're looking into glass, and some of the very courage ones are looking into bioplastics, PLA, made of biomaterials, but not like food biomaterials. It would be leftovers from other industries. I have a project myself. We're not there yet. We are far from reaching our goal, but we're working with the biggest importer to Europe of organic coffee. And when you're harvesting coffee, you have a shell around the coffee nut. And today, this is just considered waste. But it has a high level of fibers and cellulose. So we're looking into making jars and lids of this material. I don't even know the English word for it. It's auna in Danish. It's a kind of shelf. But I think that would be a really nice story for us if we succeed, because we are taking a waste product from another industry and we are using it before it's becoming actually into a product in the waste stream. But the way we do it will be that it's 100% compostable in an industrial facility. So it will actually go back in the circularity, in the natural circularity. Previously, I was working on making a jar out of coast grass, the kind of seaweed that flows into our beaches every spring. And again, this is from my point of view, this is a circularity, because we're using a natural resource. We are just lending the material as long as that we are in need of a packaging. And when we are done with it, we can give it back to nature, not by throwing it into the ocean, but putting it into an industrial composting facility or a gas facility. So I think we have a lot of options here for actually avoiding fossil plast, and that must be our goal. And I would really appreciate it if the entire industry could get together and say, in 5 years, we will no longer be using fossil plast. We need to find alternatives. And of course, and then stop me, so I'm not taking all the time here, but the most important thing for us is, of course, to avoid single-use materials where it's possible. Yeah. So if we can succeed in making closed loops with, let's say, glass, we will do it. But we also have to realize that we do have products in cosmetics, but also in other industries like pharma, food, where single-use packaging will be here for the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years. Yeah. So I think instead of just closing our eyes and keep pumping up new oil and gas to produce packaging for that, we will need to find alternative materials for the single-use packagings. Yeah. At the same time that we're working on refill and big bag systems.
Yeah. And I think there's a very interesting notion to that, and that is kind of also reflected in the comment that we just received on aluminum. There are, again, many positives about this specific material, right? But a standard argument that comes then back from, for example, the plastic industry is that they say, look, if you want to recycle aluminum, you're going to need a lot more energy than if you recycle plastic, for example. And it would be interesting to also understand the life cycle assessments or analysis of specific material types in more detail. And at the same time, one way out of that is if you don't even need to recycle the material, right? And as far as I know, Alex, you're working on a take-back scheme. And does that then also go into the refilling of products, or how do you go about the material that comes back? Maybe you can shine a bit of light on.
Sure. I'm so glad to talk about the take back scheme. It's definitely one of the highlights of my career. So in this particular case, it's not about refill per se. This is a scheme that is aimed at problematic materials. So these are effectively the end of the line. So all the products that for one reason or another cannot be recycled through conventional means. So it would be either composite materials. So think about a palette, like a makeup palette that has all types of plastics in it, glass, metal, etc. It could be those single-use products that Robert was talking about, such as dental picks and that sort of stuff. And it could be things that are really teeny tiny, such as minis and that sort of stuff. So effectively, the idea behind the take back scheme was to address, as part of a portfolio of solutions, to address all these products that whatever we did, we would not have a solution right now for. So even if we made all the changes in line with the hierarchy of waste, you would still end up with these products, because this is the type of product, that the type of packaging that product, that, you know, the particular product like mascara can only be delivered in that particular type of packaging. So when we created the scheme, that was the guiding light, that we want to ensure that the things that can be recycled curbside, such as bottles, they will go where they're meant to be going. So we're not disrupting the normal streams, and they will get recycled the way they were meant to. But this is sort of like the last chance saloon. The other thing that was really important was transparency and traceability. So we wanted to make sure that the products that we took as part of the take back scheme actually end up being turned into something useful that can be recycled. Sorry, and they were truly recycled, and we understood that journey. And I think the other thing was also around ensuring that customers understand the difference between what can be recycled and what can't be, and why. So it's really exciting that we found the partners, the recycling partners, that enable that full transparency. And even though they're not coming back as packaging because of exactly this, what I was saying before, it's really a mix of material and it's really complicated to segregate, but it's going into into a type of product called Stormboard that itself is 100% recyclable. So it would, it's a plastic MDF effectively. But once you've used it for various, it's used quite a lot in construction or in sort of different like benches and that sort of stuff. But those particular materials are themselves recyclable. So if you take a Stormboard, bringing back to the factory, it can be turned back into a Stormboard, which I think it's a really good, a really good way of looking at it. And, I'll be the first to say that this is not the forever solution, but whatever we do in line with the hierarchy of waste, so, reduce, reuse, and then recycle, effectively, whatever we do, we will end up with that sort of scenario. So we do need to have a solution for that. But in order to be credible, you have to have addressed all the other problems in your sort of packaging. And take back scheme is not the goal in itself, but it is one of the tools in your arsenal that we need to be deploying. So I'm really glad that it's going so well, and it's put a scan to recycle technology that is completely new to market. So we will see we see what kind of materials are coming through, and we can sort of direct the customers to recycle via curbside, for example, if those particular products can also be recycled. So it's a really cool amount of data that we're picking up. But I think it's great that it's happening, but it has to be part of an arsenal of solutions, starting from the design phase, starting from investigating new materials, and then sort of working our way through the take back side of things.
Yeah. Can you shine a bit of light on how the consumers also reacted to these things, or any success story that you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this as a small-scale trial in 2020 in only 50 stores. So just to say that the scheme is a collaboration between No7 brand and Boots the Boots as retailer. So obviously we're part of the same group. We work really closely together. But it was sort of like, it was an idea that No7 as a brand came up with, and we joined forces with our colleagues in Boots to make it happen in store. So we think that from a customer perspective, there were a couple of things that made this a success. Firstly, it was really important for us to make it widely available. So it's in right now it's in 700 stores across the UK. It covers 95% of the UK local authorities. So we wanted it to be accessible to as many people as possible. So I think that's definitely one important success factor. The second success factor, I think it's around customer behavior. So as I mentioned before, we use a technology called Scan to Recycle, which is provided by a company called Matrix. And effectively, we're asking the customers to scan the product. And as I said, this allows us to understand exactly what's coming through. So we have visibility. We can divert the things that shouldn't go through the scheme, that should go through the curbside. But in order to create this behavior in customers, we thought that it was really important to reward the customer for taking the time to put stuff through the scheme. So this behavior change lever, if you will, was baked into the scheme from the beginning, and we are offering add card points. So for those of you who are not in the UK, their Boots is reward customer loyalty scheme, and we offer add card points for people who recycle. It's a spend and save mechanic. And we think that definitely that was one of the highlights. And in general, the response has been very positive from customers, as we see on social media, on the Boots website, No7 website. And it's really interesting to see that since it scaled in September last year, it has had a steady amount of customers going through the scheme. So clearly, the customers value the service, and from what we see on social media and feedback that we pick up, it's really interesting that the customers are really keen to find a solution for these products that have no other end of life options, and they see this as a really valuable service, in the space where they want to do the right thing, but they couldn't before, and to do it in a transparent way and in a way that they have that sort of guarantee that nothing will go to landfill, and that we are actually doing with the materials what we promise. So I think that's definitely one of the highlights from the customer side.
Yeah, and I think that obviously we could just talk an entire session probably just on that particular topic, because it is so interesting, and also on how the consumer shifts in their own behavior, and how they choose brands over what the impact they make with a purchase is, right? And Claire, I know that you are also looking at different material sources and different have a very close understanding of consumer trends. How did you choose your packaging? Which role did the consumer play in that? And
yeah, I think it depends on the brand, to be honest, again, within our portfolio. And just touching on something that Robert said about byproducts. So we've got a new brand launching very soon, which is more within the wellness space. And even considering byproducts in packaging that we use for void fill through direct-to-consumer purchases has been a really key part of that. And again, a lot of that is coming from what we believe is right for the planet and how we should approach that. But also, again, we know that is important to that particular customer in the wellness space. I think for Naughty, when we ask our customers, it is actually their number one criteria when shopping for this particular category is actually quality and performance. So for them, price, the kind of next thing is kind of value and price. So we do consider that in the choices we make within packaging. For the formats with Naughty, we are primarily hair care, but we do also have performance body care as well. So the other critical factor in our decision making is the use for the customer. So when they are actually have that product at home and they're using it every single day, what is going to be easy for them to use? It's quite a family-friendly range, being natural and very gentle. So again, it's considering that, we wouldn't put glass bottles for our product in that particular brand for that particular customer because it wouldn't work for them. Even though they are keen to do everything they can from sustainability, we come back to that number one and number two criteria of that performance, quality, and value and price. I think what they're looking for future, though, interestingly, is, and what they want us to look for, is about reducing plastic waste. So they're acknowledging that it's there and it's performing for them right now to deliver this product that they love, but they acknowledge there needs to be something done in future. So for us, we are always looking. We've got a fantastic team at KMI that will work across our brands, our packaging technologists, our product director. What is going to be next that still delivers the performance and the accessible, because we are actually quite accessible for Naughty in terms of the quality of the ingredients, the science that's behind our brand. So we need to protect that, because what we don't want to do is suddenly have to shift and lose those customers who've become so loyal to us and get those great results. And the other thing I would just say is that there is a real lack of understanding of recycling generally, no matter the packaging. I think, glass generally, I think everyone understands that. But I think for plastics, just the amount, the different types, how do you know what is okay to put curbside? How do you know then? I think in cosmetics, Alex, I love what the take back scheme is doing, because customers want to do the right thing, but equally, again, they want the product to work, and they're not quite ready necessarily to shift completely away from what they've known and loved for so many years. So I think all of these schemes are just brilliant to help educate them and make those decisions much easier for future. So yeah, I think in essence, it depends on our customer which we're talking to and creating for.
Yeah, and I think you're touching a very important point there with the difficulty of what happens to the product after it's used, right? And this kind of goes back into also what you, Alex, mentioned with the take back scheme. What happens to what we're using after we're done using? And to some degree, it also touches on what you, Robert, said earlier with the different material choices, right? And for a holistic approach, that counts as much as, or actually the material choice will define also what happens with that product at the end of the cycle. And it's all about recyclability, right? And this is again what we as Cleanup see on the ground very much, as we are focused on really bringing that waste management part into the market, even though it's in India and Indonesia, but where we see that if material is not recycled, it's not going to be collected because it has no value. So we also need to make the downstream work in the end and have that being part of the conversation. And I think we heard, for example, PLA as one opportunity in the future. And at the same time, critics then say, it's like, if you bring in a new waste stream, the system can't handle it. Right? It's like these things need to be considered as well, and this is why it's so crucially important that we also up-level waste sorting, basically, that we can bring in new material streams, that this material can go into better composting, for example, and these things are crucially important to working market in the end, so that the actual recycling system is not becoming the bottleneck of introducing better material, and this is something that we very much believe in.
I could just have a note on that point. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
I just saw, just before we entered here, I saw that that yesterday there was published a report on the Holy Grail 2.0 project, the European project on digital watermarks. And it has been tested in the biggest facility in Copenhagen, incinerating company. Or it's not an incinerating company. It's a resource center, but they're also having an incinerator. Maybe you heard about it. It's actually, there's a ski hill on the top. Yeah, that's the one. But as far as I just could see, I only had like 2 minutes to look at it, but it seems like that they managed to sort 95% of the packaging entering the machinery, with these digital watermarks. And I actually think this is the way forward, that when companies are producing the packagings, whether it's PLA, aluminium, fossil plastics, all types of plastic, if they add these digital watermarks, then the possibilities of having a proper recycling scheme afterwards are so much bigger. Because I've been visiting a lot of these facilities that are dealing with sorting materials, and they cannot recognize one material from another. And my best guess is that 80% of it ends up in incineration because they consider it as not recyclable. So I'm really hoping that the EU will scale up the Holy Grail project, and hopefully we will see this in a few years. And we have, a lot of rules coming on the responsibility for, dealing with recycling of our packaging. So it will make sense to think this together. So if you actually add a digital watermark, it will be cheaper for you to put it on the market.
Yeah.
And
sorry,
if I may just add something really quickly.
Absolutely.
I think, in exactly with the under the umbrella of thinking holistically, I think we should be having a lot more conversations with people at the end of the streams, because, as manufacturers or as brands, we have to be conscious of what happens to our products at the end of the life. So, I have a lot more experience with textiles than I do with cosmetics, but I think, we used to, in M&S, we used to take our designers to the Oxfam recycling facility to show them what happens to the clothes we design and what can be done with them at the end. And I think there has to be a lot more upfront thinking with the people that have to deal with the materials that we put on the market on one hand, and then on the other hand, there are things that we know from the beginning that will never be recycled. ABS, styrenes. They are not recyclable. Whatever you do, however you identify them, they're not recyclable. So I think legislation definitely plays a part, but also coming at it from a space of penury rather than a space of abundance. Because as a designer, when you think everything is possible and you can use any material in the world, of course you will use any material in the world to make the product that's the most desirable for your customers, the product that looks the best, right? But when you are coming at it from a space of penury, when you're thinking, well, not all the materials should be used, not all the treatments should be applied, and how can I use my design thinking and my design know-how to create the best possible product for my customers with the materials that we will create the most sustainable product. And I know we talked this not necessarily the right way, but let's say with the most suitable product within the planetary boundaries and within exactly what Claire was saying, what our consumers want.
Yeah.
Could I just add to that, Alex? I think that's just because we're really sorry, Joel. Is that all right?
Absolutely. This is your stage.
It's so important, everything you've just said, and I think we've certainly, from KMI perspective, in the last, at least 2 years, have really shifted our thought process in design. So, many years ago, we would have thrown for certain brands within our portfolio everything at it. The glitz and the foils and all the rest of it, because that's what our customer wanted. But actually, that's not what we want to do for the planet now. And actually, over a period of time, our customer has actually relished that and found that is the right thing to do. And the reason I think we've been able to do that, our guiding principles as a business are much stronger. We've put, as I mentioned, the UN sustainability goals in place. We have a roadmap for the business to be a force for good. We want to understand why we are here, and we're not here just to put a load of product out into the world. We're here to hopefully make every customer's life a little bit better in their interaction with us and the brands that we have. But design, absolutely, I completely agree. We're really reconsidering right from that concept stage how we use materials, because everything's a resource, isn't it? It's so important to think about it from the start, for sure.
And that also resonates really with me, because when I started my personal journey for cleanup, I went to a waste management conference in Germany, and all the waste managers were there, all the recyclers were there, and they were just cussing at the packaging industry. It's like, how can you print this glitz on toothpaste?
Exactly.
Like, why is it there, right? And I thought, it's like, why is nobody from the packaging industry actually here to have the conversation together, right? It's like, because nobody, I believe that's my core belief, is like, nobody really wants to harm the planet, right? It's like, people have their own business objectives in mind, obviously, but sometimes they might also just not know. And raising that awareness, having these conversations together is so crucially important. I love that. And actually, while we're on it and we're going a bit into the recycling case, we're getting towards the end. A big trend that is or can be seen is that people also say, is like, our products are made from recycled ocean plastic, for example. I think we have a very streamlined opinion on that. And Claire, I think you mentioned that you also looked at it, and maybe you can shine a bit of light on why you decided against that move.
Yeah, I think we continually in the background look at multiple different options and constantly kind of thinking ahead, as we said right at the start of this kind of progression and our journey to reduce our impact on the planet and harm to any people that are involved in our supply chain. So we have considered that. I think there was a practical restriction in supply, and then the consideration of quality as well, in terms of the continuation of the quality. So it may be okay to do that for one production run, for example, but the continuation of supply and to get consistency through your supply chain then became quite a consideration, as well as you said, Joel, the kind of encouraging that notion of ocean waste plastic and kind of encouraging it in that area. But from a kind of a brand perspective, that was definitely a key reason as to why we didn't progress with it at the time.
No. Alex, Robert, did you ever look at plastic coming out of the ocean as a feedstock for packaging?
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at it now and then over the last 3-4 years, and I still think that the biggest challenge here is that in order for us to use it for cosmetics, it needs to be clean, and just the ordinary PCR material we have today is not trustworthy when it comes to the cleanness of it. So using something that has, been mixed up with a lot of other, chemicals and materials and everything is even more challenging. That said, I think of course you have to collect plastic from the oceans. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I don't think you should use it for things that you put on the body or in the body. But you have a lot of, we have phones made out of plastic. Why don't you use ocean plastic for that instead of using it for cosmetics? And you see brands now and then says, well, we're using 100% ocean plastic, and you just know it's not true, because it can't be done. And we have seen cases where it has been revealed that it was, it was not true. So it's just greenwashing. Yeah. But it's just another time is up here. So I don't know if Alex has a comment for ocean plastic. Otherwise, I would like to answer one of the people in the audience that is asking a question.
Just one small thought on the ocean plastic. I think, to me, both of you absolutely hit the nail on the head about quality and availability. And I think the idea is that we want to make change at scale. And you can come up with a million amazing solutions that are applicable to runs of 100 products. And whereas it definitely helps to address the solution, probably if you manage to make that for 1 million products or 10 million products, that's probably where you should be focusing your efforts. And I think in the grander scheme of things, whereas this helps and clearly has a important halo effect around talking to customers about the importance of removing plastics from the ocean, probably if you were to focus your efforts, I would say that you would like to focus that on something that makes a better, has a better outcome and makes more impact, rather than a small run because you can't do it because it's not available and because it's not technically feasible. So yeah, I think, from my perspective, focusing your efforts on where it makes the biggest difference is really key.
Yeah. And I agree on that notion. We are unfortunately running out of time. Maybe we do have the time to answer 1-2 questions. Robert, you mentioned that you'd like to answer one. It
was Robin Butler asking, which industry do you think is setting the benchmark for best practice when it comes to sustainable packaging? And I'm just noticing more and more companies within the textile business. I know the clothing is often not very popular to talk about when you're talking sustainability, but when it comes to packaging, I actually seen zero packaging companies. And some of them are using, for example, this one, Recip, that I'm looking into also now for cosmetics, which is the box that you're using for sending the products to the customers. When the customer receives this, they put it back into the mailbox or in the store box, and then it goes back to Recip, and it can be reused like 8 to 10 times. And I've seen clothing companies sending out clothes only wrapped in recycled paper in a Recip box. So it's actually zero packaging. And I know in the supply chain, it's probably been shipped from India in plastic bags, but this is a start. And I really like the idea of thinking, how can we avoid packaging? And then take it from there. And if you decide that we actually need a packaging, then how can we do it best? But start thinking, how can we avoid it? In our business, in e-cooking, we are very close to be 100% not using secondary packagings. And this is a start, because most brands they're having a bottle for the lotion or whatever, and they're putting it into a cardboard box and then shipping it to the customer in another box. So this is a way to start. How can we avoid that?
Yeah, and that plays back into this entire notion of holistic approaches, right? It's like, where are the big levers that we can pull? What needs to happen? Claire, Alex, do you have any examples that you want to bring to the table here? I mean, obviously, all of your companies are also doing an amazing job there. So, and we heard about them, but if there's any that you have top of mind, where you think there is a really well done approach?
I think from an industry perspective, clearly within our industry, we have a huge amount to do. What I'm heartened by, I suppose, is what the British Beauty Council are doing, and the fact that it's now creating a platform for smaller businesses to come together and actually collaborate on and have some more open discussions on how we can actually create change. Because I think, yes, under KMI we have a portfolio of brands, but we are so much smaller in scale than WBA, where Alex is part of it. So for us to make a change, to have a collaboration with other like-minded businesses is just brilliant. So I think from an industry, I think we're having these conversations now like we never had before, which is really heartening, as I said. So I think there's a way to go, but I'm absolutely encouraged by that. And I think it's a really exciting time to be part of this category.
Just building on that, it's actually linked to both your points. There's definitely a lot of really interesting things happening in the cosmetic, in the beauty industry in general. I think I'm literally top of my mind is the concept on effectively refilling and reusing at scale, which I think is really cool, and it's really interesting. And the people that are from Beauty Kitchen that are behind it, Stuart and Joe, they're just such pioneers and such visionaries for our industry. And also that links very nicely to the Beauty Council. And just by means of observation, as I said, the majority of my experience is in fashion, and in fashion, the innovation came from the biggest players, right? The biggest players who put the most money against it. What I find really interesting, but who are collaborating a lot with each other, like there's a lot of pre-competitive collaboration. What I find really interesting from a beauty industry perspective is that the innovation and disruption comes from the smaller companies that are coming up with the most unique solutions, and like just coming up with the craziest ideas. And what I think the next steps should be, and the British Beauty Council definitely has a role to play, is that we are working together more to scale those really cool, crazy ideas that we're seeing. So like all the waterless packaging that we're seeing, the sort of these dissolvables that reduce the packaging, the plastic free options and so on. I think there's definitely room to work together more to scale those things, because ideas we have, it's just how you bring that across the big players across the industry.
All right, and to wrap things up, I think it shows again there's no silver bullet. There's not going to be one solution for anything. I think there's a lot of potential for brands to have that conversation with their consumers, with their buyers, and show where they are taking responsibility. And this is becoming ever more important because people are asking questions. And in case there's any consumers watching that have nothing to do with packaging or with the industry, I think that's also basically a call to action in two directions, like not to blame to ask for that open conversation around packaging, to not say it's like what you're doing is fundamentally bad, but you can hear that there's a lot of complexity behind all that, but at the same time demand information and demand to have that conversation and really look into what brands are really doing also in the background, and don't be shied away from just the front door statement. Basically, I think that's a very important part, because a lot of the detail, a lot of the stuff is happening in the detail actually. And I think we can close the conversation with that. There will be a copy of this conversation, and Manisha, your question on the sustainability side of aluminum, I'm not sure, Robert, if you'd be open to connect potentially directly, if there's any further room to have the conversation. If you want to have more of these conversations, follow our channel. We will continue to have these conversations in all different kinds of directions, and I think we could just have a one-on-one conversation with each and every one of you to shine more light on what's going on. For today, I'd like to really thank you for all the input, and I learned a lot. I hope all listeners as well, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.